it was like 90 degrees and it started to rain, and we thought, well, we better go put them chickens in. So we put them in, shut the door, and forgot about them. And we came back, opened the door, and they had all expired. They had cooked to death inside of the chicken coop.
An early life lesson.
Early life youth lesson. And my dad made us pluck every one of those 200 chickens.
All right, I'm Mark Erjavec. We're here today with James Weber. Pleasure that you could come. We actually had an interesting meeting in an unrelated business probably about a month ago or so, and you had randomly brought up some subject that I was very interested in. So
Good.
I was glad to invite you here today, and we'd like to learn about a little bit more, James, about what you know. Okay. So you're James. You're from Minnesota here.
Yes.
You were able to come into our studio live today. Tell us about yourself, James. I understand you were involved in some different ventures throughout your life, and you're now very involved in the ministry, and that has led you to some of the things we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm a Christian, of course, and I've been lived in Minnesota my whole life, and always had a real interest in the land and in animals. My heritage, of course, not so much my mom and dad, but my grandpa and grandma were all farmers down in Stacyville, Iowa, and they then moved up to Minnesota. But I got the farming gene pretty strong, and so I've raised chickens, I've raised Dexter cows, and I've raised almost every breed of chicken you can think of. And what I'm really interested in is the meat bird, the meat aspect of chickens, although my wife and I do have a free-range little flock of hens that we eat from that free range, and they eat grass and bugs, and we get the nicest, orangest yolk eggs you could ever imagine, and they taste so good that we have people that come to us all the time and want those eggs, but we don't have enough to sell, so we eat them ourselves. But
that's the benefit of all the work, right? Is to be able to eat it yourself.
Eat it yourself. That's right. And
I know a lot of home chefs or people who cook for themselves, and you have to think a lot about the time and love and preparation that goes into cooking, and
exactly.
People realize that the reward is for yourself. Sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah.
First off, before we get into the chickens, tell us a little bit about what is a Dexter cow.
A Dexter cow, of course, is a heritage breed of cow that is very ancient. Goes back to Ireland, and it was actually a breed that was bred into existence by a guy by the name of Dexter. His last name was Dexter, and so hence the name Dexter cows. And so they're a little smaller cow. They don't get as big. They don't eat as much, and of course they don't drink as much, but they don't need as much land to live on. You can have more of them per acre than on normal-sized cows, so they're a little bit smaller. The bulls will get about 1,000 pounds, and the females will get about 700 pounds. And so they're just a very gentle, docile breed of cow. And they were actually brought into Minnesota. Oh gosh, I don't know the exact years, but it was a lumber baron and his wife brought them in, and they actually built some of the big houses, their houses up on Summit Avenue. And I believe their last name was Hill. And so anyway.
Probably James J. Hill?
James J. Hill's wife actually was the one, and she brought the Dexter cows over, and she had the first Dexter cows in America. And so what they are is a versatile breed. You can either have them for beef or you can have them for milk. And they're
which is unusual for modern cows.
Yeah, very, very unusual. And I breed the Dexter cows, but I only breed the ones that give me A2 milk. And what they've found through testing is that most modern day milk has lost the beta casein that makes it good for your body. In fact, when a lot of people drink milk, when it enters the human body instantly says to itself, what just happened to me? And it starts to go to war against that milk. And that's not only milk, that's a lot of things that we eat today. And it's tearing the human fabric down from the inside out. But the A2, when that comes into the human body goes, wow, this is great. This is I love this. And it actually builds the body.
And your
Yeah.
Dexter cows produce this?
All my Dexter cows are A2A2. Well, any cow can be A2A2, but see, in the quest to get more milk and more milk and more milk from one cow, they do a lot of breeding where they breed the A2A2 out. And now that you have A1A1, you have A1A2. And so that milk causes a lot of people to have autoimmune problems. Many kids are allergic to it. They'll get runny noses and watery eyes, and they can't drink it at all. And they have to
And
stop
this is the
drinking
A2
it.
you're speaking.
No, this is the A1, A2.
Oh,
The
okay.
A2A2 has been, it's not totally scientifically proven, but the body of evidence that we do have says that the A2A2 is very easy for the human body to digest, and it actually builds the body. And so what we're seeing now, you're even seeing it on the grocery shelves now. So you'll see A2 there now.
Mhm.
And so it's just starting to come on the scene now, this knowledge. And I think you're going to see everybody trying to go to A2A2. But all my cows are A2A. I made sure that all mine were A2A2,
Mhm.
and I have them tested.
Is this something about their biology, or is it just about how the inputs or the feed you give them, or a
No,
mix?
no, it has nothing to do with the feed. This is their genomes. This is their genes, and you have to have them. In a Dexter cow, you could have an A1, A2, and you wouldn't care if you were just for beef.
Mhm.
You wouldn't care. But if you are raising them and you do want to harvest the milk, then you definitely want to go to the A2A2. Because as people are starting to be more health conscious, they're starting to educate themselves and they're starting to find out about A2A2 milk. And so it's going to be a big deal in the future, I think. We'll see how it goes, though, but I think so.
So you raise an interesting point, and this will relate both to the cows that we were just speaking of
Yeah.
and our topic for today, which is chickens.
Yes.
Is that most people's perception of so many farm-related things right now is what they see at the grocery store. So we go into the
Exactly.
grocery store and we see cage-free chickens and free-range chickens,
Yeah.
and then in the eggs would be the normal thing. Give us some distinctions between specifically what you look at, which is free-range chickens.
Well, the true definition of a free range chicken is a chicken that is let out of his coop every day and he just goes wherever he wants. Now, when you see free range label on a package of chickens, most of the time what you're getting is a chicken that's left out into a cage, and the floor of that
He
cage
can go anywhere he wants in the cage.
as long as he's in the cage, and most of the time, and that's better than being in a small cage
Right.
or raised in a huge building where they can only move a little bit. But it's not really the true definition of a free range.
The real definition is they
Yeah.
can go out in the pasture and go about
Yeah.
their business.
Wherever they want, and they can eat and very beneficial for a chicken to eat grass. They love to eat grass and bugs, of course, and an occasional worm or whatever they can get their hands on. And that's going to be your healthiest egg to eat, and that's going to be your healthiest chicken.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a true definition of free range. And so,
And when it comes to the eggs, what is the difference the layperson would see in the eggs from a free range
well,
chicken to more factory?
if you were going to buy from the supermarket, if you were going to buy a regular egg and then crack it into a pan, and then if you got a true free range egg and cracked it in the pan, you would notice the difference right away. The yolk on the free range chicken is going to be a deep orange, deep yellow, and the other one is going to be very pale. And the nutrition value is just markedly more substantial in the free
that darker
range
color,
chicken.
right?
Yeah, and better for you. And so I keep a small flock of free range chicken, but my passion is the meat bird. That's what I'm really trying to.
So tell us about that, and tell us about some of the differences in the meat
Well,
birds that are out there.
well, the meat birds basically you have dual purpose chickens where they'll sell and they'll tell you that this chicken is good for meat and this chicken is also good for eggs. And it's not totally a misconception, but the one thing that you have to know when you buy a dual purpose chicken is that it's not gonna, when you put it on your supper table after you raise it and process it and freeze it and then pull it out of your freezer and make it for dinner, it's not gonna look like the chicken you buy at Cub that's rotisserie chicken, and those chickens that you buy are Cornish Cross X or Jumbo Cross X chicken. And you can buy them, you can actually buy them as little chicks and you can raise them. And I've raised hundreds of them and filled up my freezer every year with them, and they're wonderful. They taste wonderful. And you can raise them from a chick to your freezer in about 6, 7 weeks. And you'll have a nice big plump chicken. And that's the chicken you
and
buy.
this is what we visualize more is the chicken we buy in the grocery store.
That's the one you buy.
Or maybe even the chicken we're getting when we go to a fast food restaurant.
Correct. Like that's going to be the Cornish cross. And not all Cornish crosses are created equal, but we'll go to that later.
So how was this breed originally come about, as far as you know?
Well, as far as I know, there was a gal in the United States that bred these in her backyard. And she kept doing crossbreeding, and then she finally came up with this breed. The interesting thing about it, though, is that it got into the hands of modern-day hatcheries and big business, and that crossbreeding is the best kept secret since the atomic bomb. You cannot find that how to crossbreed. But I would say, if anybody knows, I would be very, very interested, because for 20 years I've tried to crossbreed those chickens into existence, and I can't do it.
Well, maybe we'll have a listener that'll give some feedback.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So that's why I said that. But yeah, so but going back to the dual-purpose chickens, you can put them on your table. They're going to be thinner. The legs aren't going to be as round and as plump. And the other thing you need to know is that you need to process them at about 16 weeks.
Which is about twice the length of time?
Oh, at least twice, yeah. Maybe even 3 times, because you're looking at 6 to 7 weeks, and 16 weeks, yeah, you're a little over half. And so double the time. But the thing about the dual-purpose chicken you have to understand is that if you go further than that, they're good for eggs, but then now they're no longer any good to eat. Mm. The only way you could ever eat them would be in a pressure cooker and with soups and stuff. So
or chicken nuggets,
chicken, something like that. But that's that's a mistake. A lot of first-time chicken people will make that mistake of trying to eat them
too long.
Yeah, when they're like a year old or something, and they're like rubber. You can't eat them. So any chicken that you raise to eat, you have to butcher them young. And actually, that's the same with the Dexter cow too. You butcher them about 26 months old.
What originally brought you to your interest in this area of chickens?
Well, my father always had chickens, and us kids were raised on chickens that were with my father. And interesting story. One time, my brother and I it was like 90 degrees and it started to rain, and we thought, well, we better go put them chickens in. So we put them in, shut the door, and forgot about them. And we came back, opened the door, and they had all expired. They were all, because they had cooked to death inside of the chicken coop. And so so there was
an early life lesson.
Early life youth lesson. And my dad made us pluck every one of those 200 chickens. And it was quite an ordeal, and we never made that kind of mistake again, I'll tell you that. But anyway, chickens are one of the easiest farm animals to raise. They don't need much. They just need a windbreak and get out of the wind, and they don't even need a lot of heat in the wintertime. And, you just keep feeding fresh water for them, and clean them out periodically, and they will be good little citizens, and they will keep producing for you.
Do you think this ease of maintenance or ease of raising them was why it seemed to become very popular during COVID, where a lot of people had backyard chicken coops?
Well, I think one of the reasons it became popular in COVID was because people were going to Walmart and different grocery stores, and they were seeing empty shelves. And I think it kind of puts something into
it changes
people.
The psyche.
Yeah, your perspective starts to change, and you think, well, the United States, we're always going to go into a grocery store. They're always going to be packed full of food. And I think COVID showed us that it's possible that they may not always be that way.
And that it can happen very fast.
Very fast, and that happened very fast. And so if you have a little backyard flock of chickens, you can, if you bought yourself even a modest little incubator. I have an incubator where I can hatch out 290 chickens or chicks at a time, and I've got a hatcher, and so I'm self-sufficient with chickens, and we're going to talk more about the meat birds and self-sufficiency as we go along. But I think that people are starting to become aware of, there's a lot of autoimmune going on. People are coming down with lupus and Hashimoto's and all different kinds of autoimmune problems. They're allergic to gluten. We already spoke about the milk allergies, and people are starting to wonder about what they're putting in their bodies. And there's a huge shift towards organic. And you can't get much more organic than having your own chickens and watching your feed. And then, of course, feeding them well and letting them free range. And you're going to have the best health scenario you can have. And a very small flock of chickens can feed a family, with meat and eggs. So if things ever did go bad,
Which would be two huge protein staples for a long time.
right there. And then on my little place, I've got chickens and cows, so I can have beef, I can have milk, I can have eggs, I can have poultry. And so, but that doesn't give you everything you need, but it can sustain you for quite a while, actually. You know what I mean? So, so a lot of people are thinking about that, and are really looking at different ways of being a little more self-sufficient, and knowing what goes in your body is a big deal to me. When I raise my own, I know exactly what's going into my body, and I know that I'm not going to get sick from it, or I'm not going to have a bad result from it. So
it's interesting to me. Would you say that you and your family's diet consists a high percentage of the things that you?
Yeah, actually it does.
From?
It does. We, and it depends on the time of year again too, because we live in a state where you got 6 months of winter, and so unless you have a high functioning greenhouse
and root cellar
and my wife cans. My wife cans about 75 cans of spaghetti sauce. So we eat spaghetti once a week, and we grow only heirloom tomatoes because we can harvest the seed from them, and legally, and we can harvest the seed from them, and then we can regrow. We don't have to go and buy more seeds. And
which creates sustainability in your own
sustainability, and that's what and so and I don't think you talk about off the grid or being a prepper, and I don't think you can ever 100% get off the grid or prep yourself in. I suppose you could, but it would be pretty.
It would be a big investment over a long time.
It would be pretty difficult, I think, in this day and age, though. So we don't have any noble aspirations of being totally off the grid, but we sure enjoy it when we sit down to a chicken dinner, and we grow purple potatoes, and we grow our own lettuces, and we can sit there, and my wife oftentimes, she'll say, we'll have company over, and she'll say, everything you're eating here came from this place right here.
That's quite special.
Yeah, and we enjoy that a lot. So.
So let's talk about the diets of the chickens. So we talked a little bit about the free range, which is really that they go out and eat what they kill, if you will, or eat what they can find.
Yep.
Tell us about the diets of chickens in general and how they can vary and produce different products.
Well, the chickens, they need, I believe, they need grains. There's a lot of people who don't believe that. You'll see YouTubes out there where the Amish don't feed any grain. They just feed them table scraps and stuff. And a chicken will, if it's hungry enough, will pretty much eat anything. I mean, they're little dinosaurs. They will actually almost eat anything. But I think that, if you give them about a 19 to 20%, 22% protein diet in your grains, and get as organic as you can, and get non-GMO as you can. And that's pretty tough in our society today because there's, from lack of knowledge from past generations, there's been a lot of fertilizers and herbicides that have been dumped on the ground, and so that really produced a food that's not clean, a grain that's just not really clean. And so what we do with our chickens is we we look for organic feed, and we found a few places that grow it, but not all organic is again created equal because of what I just said. But we like a feed company in Luxembourg, Minnesota, called Luxembourg Feed, and all of their feeds are coming off of fields that where the farmers are transitioning them off of the old practices into the new regenerative practices, and so they can't claim that they're organic, but they can claim that they're non-GMO for sure, and then they can also claim that they're transitioning, and as that transition goes on and the ground regenerates itself, eventually they'll be able to call themselves organic. And so it's very hard to call yourself truly organic in this country today, but at least we're
That
going
doesn't stop people from putting the label on it.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's because people are, becoming more and more concerned about what they put in their bodies.
No doubt.
But of course, that feed's a little more expensive too, because
Is there and you may or may not know this, James, is there a ratio of, what the amount of feed that goes into creating a pound of chicken?
there is for sure, and I have read some statistics on that, but I don't know what it is right now.
I would
off the
assume,
top
though,
of my
that
head.
if you're going with
Yeah.
the sustainable and organic practices that you're going with, there's probably actually a higher ratio of feed.
Well, when you're growing meat birds, you want to feed them a higher protein broiler feed. It's called a meat grower that helps them to grow quickly. And then if you're growing them for eggs, you feed them a layer which is higher in calcium and lower in proteins, and then they seem to do well on that. But when I call up, my feed store and I tell them, well, I'm going to bring in 50 broilers to raise, they go right and they compute how much grain I'm going to need, and then they send it to me. So that's as far as my knowledge goes, as far as those ratios go.
You can even Amazon your chicken feed these days. If
You
want.
can, well, you could, yeah, you actually could, yeah, but
And the chickens themselves is probably.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, I get my chicks from various hatcheries, and I have them shipped to me in the mail. And so the post office will call me up, and I'll go and pick them up right from the post office. So I don't have to buy them through a feed mill or anything. But what I'm trying to do is phase out the hatcheries now, because as I said, I can't figure out how to breed the broiler chickens. And you have broiler chickens which are called the Cobb 500s or the Cobb 700s, and those two breeds of broilers are the best in my mind, are the best tasting chickens, is the Cobb 500. So whenever I order the Cornish Rock X crosses, I always try to get into those, either the Cobb 500 or the Cobb 700. And you can buy all kinds of broilers from all different hatcheries, and they won't be those Cobb 500s or 700. And to me, they just don't taste as good. And of course, the feed you give them really is, pertinent to how well they'll taste at the end of the day, too, because I've raised up chickens and ate them out of the freezer from certain different organic grains, and they just didn't taste well at all. But what's nice about the Luxembourg feed is that my wife is allergic to soy.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell them, I said, well, my wife's allergic to soy, so we don't want any soy in the feed. And so that's exactly how they give it to us, with no soy. And they do very well on that.
I learned how challenging the soy allergy was. The president of one of my divisions once was a young lady that was allergic to soy. And as we would travel around going to trade shows and stuff like that, it was almost impossible to find her food, as you would go places.
Sure.
And as we look at labels and stuff, trying to accommodate her at, like stopping at, at gas stations or something like that.
Exactly.
Everything in there had some sort of soy.
It's everywhere. That's for sure. Yeah.
No doubt.
Well, so what I'm trying to do now is I'm just got my first batch of chickens from France. They're called the French Bresse chicken. And the French have for centuries bred these chickens, and you couldn't get them in the United States until 2011. And so now they're here, and I've got my hands on a small flock of them. And the French they come from a region in France called Bresse, France, and they claim that they're the best tasting chicken the world has ever seen. And I don't know.
That's quite a claim.
It is quite a claim, and I've never tasted one, but so I went, to the source, YouTube, and I went to find out how these chickens taste, and find out that these chickens are bought by the finest Michelin chefs in France, and they cook them. They bake them or cook them in a pig bladder, actually in a pig bladder, and they come out table side, and you see
this reminds me of a foie gras type thing where they put it in the goose.
So then they cut this bladder and take it out, and it realistically on the YouTube it doesn't look good, but people love it. They say it is just the best. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these, because these are a dual purpose chicken, and they raise them for meat, like I said, in France. And so I'm going to take the Cornish broiler until somebody tells me that I can't. That were the ones that I normally buy. And I'm going to raise some of those young ones and some of the hens, and I'm going to crossbreed them to these roosters from France.
And as far as you know, nobody's tried that yet? Or?
Well, I think there are a few, but not many. So I'll be on the cutting edge of that with just a few other people. So, and so what'll happen then is once I get that crossbreed, that hybrid, then what I'll do is I'll keep a rooster and some hens, and I'll start to do what's called spiral breeding or clan breeding to keep the genetics pure so you don't get too inbred. And then what I hope to do is to become self-sufficient, where I won't have to go to hatcheries and buy chicks anymore from hatcheries. Because when I first started buying broilers, I used to be able to get them for like 41 cents each. And now they're about $3 to $5 each.
Wow.
So they've really gone up since I've started all this. And so
you take that, and you take all the work and the feed that goes into them, and you have some very expensive chicken when you're all...
Well, you can go to the gas station and buy a broiler for $8.99. So when you look at that, it's like, why would you even raise one? Because all of the time and effort and my quick answer to that is that when you eat those, you don't know what you're putting in your mouth or what was put into that bird or antibiotics or whatever. And I don't put any kind of antibiotics in any of my animals or any of that stuff. So anyway, then once I get this breed going, then I hope to be able to hatch my own every year and fill my freezer myself every year with these best tasting chickens crossed with these everyday chickens that we eat.
We're all going to want to have dinner at your house someday.
There you go. I'm going to call them Weber's Fat Boys.
That's a great name. So you kind of touched upon that there's a culture of people in the chicken business here all around the world, and that you've kind of tapped into this and fed into this. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned and some of the people you get to interact with regarding chickens.
Well, that's a wide open topic there, because people are always trying different things with chickens, and but yeah, there is definitely in the Dexter world. There's a whole Dexter family out there, and of course in the chicken world, there's a whole family there. Many of my friends and acquaintances raise chickens, and so it's a culture all unto itself. But I think now they've even passed laws where in the city, you can have up to 5 chickens, and the neighbors can't really say anything about it unless you have a rooster. You can't have a rooster because they make too much noise. So
I think that's actually how we first started talking about chickens. I was talking to you on the phone, and some of your roosters were going off in the background.
That's right. And I said, I'm sorry, but I'm standing up on my chickens. But yeah, that's right. So
it's a dead giveaway, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what, give us some interesting story of some of the experience you've had raising chickens that have
Yeah.
that's come out unexpected for you?
Well, the biggest setback in chickens is dogs, neighborhood dogs. I've lost more chickens to neighborhood dogs. Last summer, I lost 9 chickens to a possum.
Wow.
And once I lost 42 chickens to a raccoon,
Wow.
all in one night.
Okay.
So it's yeah, there are predators out there, and when you free range chickens, you have to expect to lose a few to
So raccoons
predators.
are an enemy of chickens?
Oh, yeah, and they just kill them, and they don't even. But a mink, a weasel, there's all kinds of them. Otter, my brother lost a bunch of chickens to an otter one day, and just last week I had an old rooster who was blind in one eye and he couldn't walk real well, and a bald eagle came down and took him away right off our property there.
Oh
So
my.
yeah,
Did
so
you see it happen?
no, but I went out to look for him, and my wife said, "Well, there's a bald eagle sitting down there by the lake. We live on a lake, and right on the other side of the cattails, the bald eagle had him there, and there's no way to get to him or anything." So
Is this, when you talk about these heavy losses from the natural
yeah.
predators, I guess, is this because the chickens are reasonably defenseless?
Well, actually, a live, healthy chicken will rarely ever be caught by a hawk or an eagle.
So they can outrun them or just outmaneuver them?
Yeah, they get under the bushes and stuff, and but when the dogs come in or the predators like that or the coyotes or foxes, then they're no match for them. They just yeah. And I've got a chicken door that automatically opens in the morning and then automatically shuts at night. And I had one fox that actually had that thing timed.
And they go and get breakfast?
Yeah, till I figured it out, and then you can adjust the time to make it open a little later in the day. But yeah, so we've tried all different kinds of experiments with our chickens. We've set up the huge mesh fencing and let them free range that way. And so there's a lot of different. Chickens are very adaptable and they are very resilient. And aside from that predation, it's I've had some chickens up to 5 years and still laying eggs. But typically, you keep a hen for about 1 year, 2 years max, typically, and then you pressure cook them into soup or something because they don't lay. If you really want production from eggs, you can't keep them after about a year. Most production egg farmers will keep them about a year.
So this is, again, just for the layperson. So with some of your chickens and some of the
Mhm.
special breeds you have, what's the rate of reproduction you could expect
Well,
in doing some breeding on your own?
that could be a huge number because a chicken. I raise a heritage Cornish, white Cornish, a very rare bird that's very hard to find. And the reason I raise them is because they're one of the foundation stocks of the broiler chickens that we buy in the store. So I was trying to recreate that breed, and so those chickens will lay about 4 to 5 eggs a week. And so if you have 5 of them laying that much a week, and you have one rooster, you could really be hatching eggs out.
Well,
You could be all year round. I hatched some eggs out last January, as a matter of fact. I sent away for these French chickens in the mail, and they sent me eggs, and I actually hatched them out from the eggs.
oh,
So,
well. And is that the normal way that you would?
no, typically you have a better success rate if you order chicks, already day-old chicks, because when a chick hatches out from an egg, they can live for 3 to 4 days with no food or water.
And that literally counts the shipping time, would you imagine?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why they time it. When you go to a hatchery and you get them through the mail, they have to get them to you in that first 3 4 days. Otherwise, they start to go under stress.
What are they living on for those first couple of days?
As they come to the end of their incubation period inside of the egg, there's a little yolk sac in there that they suck up into their body, and
So they're essentially eating that
they eat
nutrients
that.
that's there.
Yeah, and that lasts them about 3 days.
Interesting.
They stay very strong. And yeah, so I've had great success there. Very rarely do I have maybe more than one chick not make it through the mailing process. So it's a very highly successful way of doing it. Yeah.
Interesting. And my mother, before she retired, was a rural letter carrier, and
Okay.
occasionally she would talk about having to deal with the
A
chicks.
box
Yeah,
of chicks.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an exciting time at the Weber household is when the chicks come. All the grandkids come over and they want to see them and they hold them and so it's a good time.
An area of interest I've had with chickens, or an experience I had, was when I lived in Kiev, Ukraine. There was a gentleman named Val Stilawar who was the former president of Pepsi, Ukraine, and he was charged with opening the Kentucky Fried Chicken franchises in Kiev. And something I thought was interesting is that he explained to me that it was taking him a lot of time to go around and find farms that could actually produce the chickens that could be used for these Americanized Kentucky Fried Chicken recipes. And ultimately, what he said is that he had to develop his own farms to go and raise the chickens for these recipes.
Sure.
And we were chatting a little bit about this, James, and you were explaining that the chickens we think about today, these ones that we would go and buy in the supermarket, are actually not a natural chicken per se.
No, no, they're a hybrid and they have to be crossbred. And as far as I know, there's 3 or 4 different chickens that you crossbreed to get that done. And as I said, a gal.
And when we say that, we're
Yeah.
trying to get them fatter, basically.
Yeah, grow fast and get them from egg to the freezer in a short period of time with the least amount of grain. And so then you cut your costs and you get the most bang for your buck. And that's kind of the American way.
And within the industry, they refer to these as Frankenstein chickens.
Some of them do, some people do. But I think the misnomer there is that they think that they're different things done to them with chemicals and stuff like that. But it's really not true. They're just a hybrid from
It's more related to the breed that
for
they are.
breeding, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A crossbreed, and that's why they call them Cornish X crosses. And so they grow very fast, but the meat is totally safe for you. There's nothing Frankensteinian about them at all. The only thing that I would clarify there is that they do get, if you don't butcher them at 6, 7, 8 weeks, then they really start to get big, and they can't even hardly even move after that. So yeah, sometimes they have a lot of leg problems, or they'll just die because they're just so highly bred. But as far as the meat goes, it's totally safe for human consumption. Yeah,
It is quite a miracle. Between the chicken, the bird, and the eggs that they create, we get so much real healthy
Exactly.
nutrients and protein that we need.
exactly. Yeah, and you always hear people saying, "Well, should you eat eggs?" And people are going, "No, you shouldn't eat eggs." And does this to your heart or does that to your heart? And I typically blow a lot of that off. People use it for branding or pushing a product that they want you to buy or something else that they want you to buy, and they don't want you to buy the eggs. But people for millennia have been living off of chickens and eggs, and it's just fine.
No doubt.
So
Thanks, James, for coming in to talk today about chickens. And I think you've educated our listeners and me definitely about more about this fascinating hobby you have.
thank you. It's worthwhile to do it. Well, thank you for having me.